I'm Tinny from Mini Bowl Design, and today I think I'm just going to talk about stove design and give you some insight into how this all works. Now, I've been working now for, I don't know, probably a couple of weeks on a concept stove, an idea that I came up with. And I've got a working model, but the problem is it's hard to maintain because it's got some high tolerances that have to be just right, and it's sensitive to the height of your feeder too. The alcohol level has to be just right, but if everything's just right and you have the wick at the right height and everything, it's completely controllable from a complete simmer right up to a real high heat rolling boil and everything in between. Now, my goal here is to build a stove that is completely controllable from just an absolute simmer. Ideally, if you go all the way over to turn it right out, all the way up to a real high heat rolling boil. I also want it to be small and modular so that I can put it like snap it right into the body of this Never stove or this gerbil cage, or as far as that goes, maybe even into a Bongo Pro 2, so that I can just take it and snap it into place and convert that stove to a completely controllable design with little or no problem. Modular enough so if I had that design, the stoves would all accept it. The trouble is, I haven't come up with a design yet. Not an easy one to produce and one that's user-friendly. Now, there's several reasons for that, which I'll get into next. The reason for that is, number one, from my perspective, is the fact that my stoves are so small and so lightweight works against me on any design, because I've seen some controllable stoves that were fairly big and had a fuel tank on the bottom of them. And some of them work off of basically just an adjustable kerosene lantern that they've converted to alcohol. Now, that works okay if you've got a tank of a pint of alcohol underneath it and all the structure that goes with it. Because as that flame burns, everything that the flame touches heats up. And if you have a big enough structure underneath it, it'll just slowly absorb the heat, and over time the fuel will warm up and everything, and it'll be no problem in one cooking session. But when you get down to something small like this, and your burner starts to heat up, the only thing you have to absorb the heat is a very small 1 ounce or less stove, and that heats up fairly fast. You know, in like 10 or 15 minutes, it can be to the point where you can't touch it anymore because there's just nowhere for the heat to go, so it builds up in the stove. And the problem with that is that when the stove gets hot, the alcohol inside of it gets hot, or the alcohol coming into it gets hot. And when it gets hot, it turns from a liquid to a vapor and starts to vent, and it's not controllable anymore. Most of these stoves I built, when you first turn them on, they're completely adjustable and they're just a dream to work with. But as the heat builds up, when it gets up above, say, 130, the alcohol will start to expand and they're not adjustable anymore. They're okay wide open, but when you go to close them back, you're venting so much gas that they won't close back and shut down. And that's been my biggest problem. No matter how many ways I've insulated them, eventually they all succumb to the same thing, and that's too much heat. The bodies heat up. And I haven't found a way to get around that yet. And I've come up with some fairly innovative designs, but in the end, every one of them, in the end, heats up above 130 and starts venting. So that's my biggest problem right now. Now, my second problem is that when I'm building these, any concept I come up with, in order to carry out the concept and test it, I have to build a stove from scratch. And as any of you have bought any of my bag-o junk from a Proto run, you can see that I built a lot of parts. Sometimes I'll build physically 5 or 10 pounds of Proto junk like you see in front of me here, just to test out a design as it progresses. One of the other problems is that as you're building the design, if it takes an hour to build it, in the process of building it, as my mind keeps working on the design or as I'm doing something, it'll dawn on me there's a better way to do it. Well, when that happens, quite often those parts that you just invested an hour in are not suitable for the mental upgrade, so you just set those parts aside and you start all over again. You may get part way through like 3 different stoves and almost get through them and have an epiphany or a paradigm shift and just set those aside and never even use them before you finally get to the final idea that you try it, and then in the end that idea may not work. So it generates a huge amount of bago junk, proto junk. So what I've started to do is with this idea here is I'm making up jigs and pieces that can be snapped together to initiate a concept. All kinds of different designs and pieces that I can snap together, kind of like a Lego concept, to try out the initial tryout of an idea. And when I get enough of these, I'll be able to just take the box and, like Lego, snap an idea together, probably make a few parts, and test out a concept rather than building an entire stove from scratch. There's probably going to be maybe 10 different basic parts to snap together to make any design, and probably it'll require that I make a couple of small parts to initiate the design and try it out. And that will save me a lot of time in building these stoves from scratch, because I've noticed over time here I'm recreating the same part over and over again, and that's just not a smart way to go. When you're building protos, you use a huge amount of resources, as you can see, lots and lots of material that could be used to build good stoves, and after you build protos out of them, it's basically junk and it's not good for anything. So I'm trying to refine the concept of building protos, and what I eventually in the end want to do is come up with one small stove about the size of the top of this that's fully adjustable and can be used on all my other stoves. And that's where I'll probably stop with my stove building design, but I'm a long way from that right now. So I'm Tinny from Mini Build Design. Get out and hike, take a friend, enjoy your alcohol stoves, and more important than anything, have a really great day. Bye-bye.